record. We do not intend to take any issue with what's contained in the certificate, nor do we intend to engage Advocate Johnson on same, just for record purposes, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
And thank you to you too, Advocate Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The second issue is last week during the testimony of Colonel Padiachi, certain documents became relevant to the Commission, and following his testimony, during the course of his testimony, the Commission issued a subpoena calling upon him or upon IDEC to disclose 3 documents based on the testimony of Colonel Padiachi. A further subpoena was issued yesterday calling for further documentation. All that document is relevant to the testimony of Advocate Johnson. I have had a brief chat with my learned friend for IDEC regarding these subpoenas. So if perhaps I may invite him to go on record to indicate the status of the subpoenas and when the documents requested may be availed. Thank you.
Mr. Podlani.
Thank you, Chair. I acknowledge the 3 subpoenas mentioned by Ms. Sello. The 2 were received last week and the other one came in yesterday late. My instructions are the documents concerning the arrest and prosecutions relating to General Khumalo and others are no longer in the possession of Ms. Johnson, nor is she responsible for them. The instructions
does that mean IDEC as a whole, no longer in the possession of IDEC?
What I understand, Chair, is that since the 18th of June or thereabout, Ms. Johnson asked that she be relieved of the responsibility to deal with those matters given what was said at some point even about her personally. She felt that she is conflicted and therefore should not be the one leading those processes. The instruction I have is that one Advocate Nicolette Bell, who is the Deputy National Director of Public Prosecutions, and I have is that one Advocate Nicolette Bell, who is the Deputy National Director of Public Prosecutions and Head of General Prosecutions, is the one who is now charged with the responsibility to oversee all the matters emanating out of the referral that was made by Mr. Adams, MP, so that the head of IDEC is no longer responsible for that process. But I didn't relate this to my colleague because it came to my attention only yesterday when we received the last of the 3 subpoenas, when I was asking what happened to the initial two subpoenas, whether we had complied or not. But the position is as I've just stated it. What I'm told is that the prosecutors from IDEC remain in charge of those cases, but they do not report to the head of IDEC. Also, the instruction is that those prosecutors would be in possession of the relevant documents, but the witness before you today is not the one from whom they take instruction, nor does she issue instructions to them. I wish the subpoena that came yesterday had come earlier, because then perhaps I would have relayed this to the evidence leader, and then the relevant person would have been the one to whom a subpoena is issued. But I do think that to the extent that we were told off record that some of those documents would relate to Ms. Johnson's testimony tomorrow, then perhaps a subpoena can issue still today to the relevant person.
And would IDEC be taking the formalistic position of insisting that a subpoena be issued in the name or names of the person or people who are in possession of the relevant material? Are they not willing to just cooperate and furnish the material to the commission?
I would not have...
Or you have no instructions on that?
I don't have an instruction in that regard, Chair, but I can tell you my experience...
I see a number of people around here who I assume have something to do either with Ms. Johnson or the NPA. Are you not in a position to take instructions?
The only person I know is Mr. Mthunzi Maga, who's seated somewhere behind me. The rest I do not know, but certainly during an adjournment I can take an instruction.
Yeah, I'm making the assumption purely on the basis that I hardly ever see people sitting in front of Ms. Zianda over there.
Oh, no, sir.
And it's purely on that basis that I'm making the assumption that they may well be connected to Advocate Johnson.
Now, Chair, I have an explanation for that.
Yes.
It has just come to my attention because I had to turn back and look at them. I understand who they are. They don't have any authority in regard to the issues that we're debating. They
Yes.
are Ms. Johnson's protectors.
Oh.
They would be useful to you when they have to protect her, bringing those documents to you. Insofar as you asked me, Chair, whether we adopt a formalistic approach, I don't have instructions, but in the short time that I've been involved with IDEC, my experience has been that there's a lot of authorizations and red tape, the typical thing that you would find in government institutions. So in as much as I would make a few calls and nudge and ask that the documents be made available, I would still request that a formal subpoena be issued so that when it is later asked on what basis were specific documents made available, then there's something to rely on. That does not, of course, mean before that process is undertaken, I would not make the requisite number of calls that must be made.
I was about to say exactly that. I'll come back to you just now, Mr. Sello. I was about to say perhaps the two processes should run parallel to each other. And I hope sense will prevail and that there will not be an insistence on a subpoena, especially on material that they do not own personally.
Indeed.
It's just public information, as it were. Public not in the sense of it being in the public domain, but public in the sense that it actually belongs to us as the populace, as South Africans, in that sense. Yes.
So may I just close off by saying, in relation to the two earlier subpoenas, at the time when they were out, I didn't have time with Advocate Johnson because of what had happened when he was supposed to appear before he was indisposed, and then I couldn't have access to her. But I only then was able to have a consultation with her yesterday. This is when I got the instruction as to what is happening with specific documents that relate to General Khumalo and others. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Sello.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm at a bit of a loss. We address subpoenas to the institution. And it is not required of the Commission and its members to go locate this.
Do you actually have a copy readily at hand now, just to read what it says? As Mr. Bodlani was addressing us, I did wonder in my mind to whom this subpoena or these subpoenas
we're trying to call it up, whether
were addressed.
Yes.
And based on his submissions, I then assumed that probably they specifically refer to Advocate Johnson.
They wouldn't, the subpoenas issued last week wouldn't specifically refer to Advocate Johnson. They would refer to IDEC.
Yes.
Or as Mr. Padiache, Colonel Padiache was given to saying to management of IDEC.
Yes, yes.
And we have now the very head of that management sitting before you today. Whoever they are addressed to, insofar as they concern the affairs of IDEC, they don't belong to that particular individual. They are neither the prosecutor's documents nor the investigator's documents. They remain IDEC's documents. That person is deployed to execute certain functions, and if he or she were hit by the proverbial bus, the process would follow by a successor. One is showed up to me now, by way of example, Chair, in response to your question, the subpoena. This would be the subpoena dated the 20th of July, 2026. This is addressed to Advocate Andrea Johnson in her capacity of investigating director of the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption, IDEC. So I would argue this is addressed to IDEC through its head, the investigating director, Advocate Johnson, sitting here before us here today. In my view, it is the appropriate way to address such subpoenas and such requests. It is to the institution. Upon receipt, the institution will determine who is the best placed person within that institution to deal with that subpoena to enable the institution to respond thereto. So, to the extent that it is suggested that it depends on who it was addressed to, we don't address subpoenas and requests to various members of an institution. It is to the institution, and the head or the right person in the institution will make a determination as to whom to direct that to enable the institution to act accordingly. The second issue is I understood my learned friend to reference what he called the Khumalo matter that is currently in court, and the arrest of Khumalo. And I think, if I understood him well, I speak subject to correction, of course, advised that Advocate Johnson has since been relieved of her duties, has been relieved of her responsibility in respect of that matter, something to that effect. To the extent that I understood him correctly, I just want to place on record that we know we have before us the investigating director of IDEC. We do not have, or neither have we been served, with any document that informs the Commission that there are certain aspects of IDEC that Advocate Johnson is not responsible for as at the 18th of June. So as far as we are concerned, we are speaking to the right person who is responsible for all matters within IDEC. I do not know who has relieved her of certain duties insofar as that arrest is concerned. But I just want to place on record that we have nothing so advising us. We go by the provisions of the Act to determine who is responsible for IDEC, and that person we submit as the appropriate person to engage on all matters pertaining to IDEC. Lastly, although we will traverse the issues regarding the arrest of General Khumalo and others, the subpoena specifically issued yesterday related to a slightly different topic, though relevant. Commissioners, you will recall that when Colonel Padiache was testifying, we referred to the Section 28 summons that were issued. And in this regard, I would like to, if you could make this note, it's the Section 28 summons dated the 6th of February 2025. It is to be found in File 3 of the IDEC exhibits. And this particular subpoena, when we engaged Colonel Padiache on in its Annexure B, which specifies what documents are required. This subpoena provided that IDEC required original complete applications for security South African Police Service. And it listed Lieutenant Generals Khumalo, Lushaba, Madondo, Ncube, Janse van Vuren, who we indicated was a contender for the post that Mrs. Mukwele was subsequently appointed to, Brigadier Mukwele herself, and Brigadier Bobby. A question arose during engagement with Colonel Padiache as to the relevance of security clearances and vetting files for Generals Khumalo, Lushaba, Madondo, Ncube, and Bobby. As the document indicates, it required their security clearances for all the ranks they have held within SAPS. His response was that when IDEC issues a Section 28 summons, it doesn't confine itself to a specific investigation. This was a broader investigation. This was a broader summons to cover other ongoing investigations within IDEC. To a question whether is IDEC seized with an investigation into the security clearances and vettings of those personnel, Colonel Padiache explained as part of investigation into the use or abuse of the Secret Service Fund. A further question was posed to him whether that particular investigation, as authorized in terms of a Section 27 affidavit/affidavits, or Section 28 sub 1 of the Act, which empowers the ID to initiate an investigation. His response, not surprisingly, was he is not in a position to, either he's not in a position to so state or management would be able to speak specifically to that issue. We then issued a subpoena regarding that particular bigger investigation that then entitles IDEC to request the documents as listed here in the Section 28, which go beyond the scope of what Colonel Padiache was investigating. It is important to draw that distinction because to the extent that Advocate Johnson may have been or is excused from dealing with the arrests, the issues arising from the arrest of Generals Khumalo and others, that does not address the bigger investigation which looks into the security clearances and the like of these generals. And it is the latter that we wanted documentation to, not the arrest. So I draw that distinction and I say that then the subpoena must be responded to and responded to positively because it doesn't deal with the arrest of General Khumalo and the others. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sello. I see your mic already on, even though you would not ordinarily have a right to respond, but I wanted to ask you a question anyway. Maybe before you say what you want to say, let me just raise the issue I wanted to raise with you. Did Advocate Johnson, of her own accord, decide no longer to be involved in matters involving General Khumalo and the others with whom he is charged, or did somebody divest her of the power to be so involved? And if someone, or rather, if the position is the latter, who divested her of the power?
The position, Chair, is she made a request to be divested and it was granted. It was granted by the National Director of Public Prosecutions, as I understand it.
Is that something that's done statutorily?
I'm not aware. That kind of detail sort of is anterior the confines of my instructions and my brief.
Yeah. I'll tell you why I'm asking. I'm asking because if, for example, one is not able to point to a specific statutory power, that one informs the request and two informs the granting of the request, I would suggest that there is no way that she can walk away from powers that resort with her, which would include doing whatever is necessary, but which happens to relate to the, let me loosely say, Khumalo cases. Therefore, she cannot, if there is no statutory basis, not respond to the subpoena. What would your response be? But of course, I'm making this suggestion purely on the assumption, or rather, let me not even say it's an assumption. I'm making this suggestion in the event that there is no statutory basis for the request and the granting of the request.
Chair, I would agree with you. And again, the answer is on the basis of if, because as I've said earlier, that matter falls anterior to the confines of my brief. So it's not an issue that I considered, investigated, and adopted a particular view in relation thereto. I didn't at all.
Okay. May I
But
quickly
it is something that
resolve this practically? And of course, from where I'm sitting, a practical resolution would be a response to the subpoenas, and if there is no legal impediment on IDEC's side for the material